Poor Waitress threw herself over the Alpha King. The glass cut her, but he held her with a kiss.
In the bustling capital of Valdora, she moved among the crowded streets with the grace of someone unseen. A waitress at the small tavern, the Silver Lantern, she spent her days carrying trays of mead and bread, serving nobles and commoners alike.
She watched the world with quiet eyes, learning its rhythms and secrets. Yet there was more to her than anyone knew.
From a young age, Alara had glimpsed the invisible threads of fate. Sometimes they shimmered gold, other times black, stretching from one soul to another. She had learned to hide this gift, knowing that in Valdora, anyone different was considered dangerous. That evening, the tavern buzzed with an unusual energy.
Word had spread that the king's Alpha Raylan would attend the royal gala. He was a man of legend, feared for his power and cursed by forces no dared speak of aloud.
Some said he had lived for centuries, ruling with an iron will and a heart wrapped in shadows. Others whispered that he could see into the hearts of men and punish those who displeased him without mercy. Alara carried her tray carefully, trying not to stumble over the polished floors crowded with nobles. She felt the air grow thick with tension as the king's guards entered the hall, their eyes sharp and unforgiving. The crowd fell silent when Raylan appeared. He was taller than most men, with black hair that fell like a river of night over his shoulders. His eyes, silver as storm clouds, scanned the room and settled on no one, yet seemed to pierce through the very souls of those present. Alara's heart raced. She had seen nobles bow with fear, yet he seemed to see through everything, including her. And though she should have been afraid, a strange pull drew her gaze back to him. Something in him felt incomplete, longing, hidden beneath the sharp edges of power. The gala began peacefully enough. Nobles mingled, laughter ringing like fragile glass. But peace in Valdora was always fragile. Within an hour, a quarrel erupted near the grand staircase. A duke accused another of betrayal, their words sharp as daggers. Voices escalated into shouts, and before anyone could react, a tray fell, shattering glass across the floor. Panic spread, servants scrambling to cover the shards. Alara's gaze darted to the center of the chaos. There, at the foot of the grand staircase, Raylan stood unflinching. But a silver dagger flew through the air, aimed at him with deadly precision. Time seemed to slow. Without thinking, without courage or thought, Alara ran. She flung herself over him, taking the blade's path. Pain exploded in her side as glass from the fallen tray sliced through her palm. She felt herself crumple to the floor, the world tilting around her. Blood mingled with the spilled wine, and she thought she might faint from the sting. But Raylan's hand was on her almost before she could register his presence. He knelt beside her, his silver eyes wide for the first time, not with anger, but concern. A warmth spread from his touch, stronger than any medicine or magic she had ever known. The pain eased, and her wound began to close, as though the king's very presence was healing her. Alara gasped, staring at him. You saved me, she whispered, voice trembling. Raylan's lips barely moved.
You were brave.
That is rare in this city.
His voice was low, carrying a weight that seemed to pull at her very soul.
Are you hurt? She shook her head, but the blood on her dress told another story. Embarrassment and awe warred inside her. No one had ever touched her with such gentleness. The entire hall seemed to hold its breath, the clamor outside fading into silence. Nobles stared, whispers rippling like waves.
A commoner had dared to protect the Alpha King.
Raylan's gaze lingered on her face. There was curiosity there, a quiet question. Alara felt exposed under that silver scrutiny. She wanted to shrink back, to vanish into the crowd. But something stronger held her in place. Something like destiny. Stay, he said finally, his tone sharp enough to command, soft enough to soothe.
You must tell me your name.
Alara, she breathed. I will remember that, he said, his voice almost a whisper. Yet it resonated as if it were carved into stone. Alara, brave Alara, the gala resumed. though tension hung thicker than the velvet curtains. Nobles avoided looking at her, some sneering, others envious. But for Alara, the world had narrowed to the figure kneeling beside her. He was not just a king, not just a legend. He was a man who had healed her with a touch, who had acknowledged her courage in a way that burned into her chest.
When the gala ended, Ryland did not return to his throne immediately. Instead, he guided her to a quiet chamber behind the grand hall.
The room was filled with books, strange artifacts, and a faint scent of herbs and fire. He gestured to a chair.
"Sit,"
he said. Alara obeyed, heart hammering, her hands trembling from shock and pain. He remained standing, a shadow in the candlelight, watching her.
"You are no ordinary girl," he said finally.
I feel it, a thread connecting us, stronger than I expected.
Alara blinked. A thread? The threads of fate, he said, his eyes intense.
"I sense them. You are different. You see what others cannot. Why hide it?" "I do not want to be feared," she admitted. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Raylan nodded. "Wise. Death. But some gifts are not meant to be hidden. Not from me."
The words made her stomach twist.
There was authority there, yes, but also a vulnerability he could not mask.
A longing she did not understand. And for a moment, Alara wondered if this man, feared by all, carried the same loneliness she did. A sudden noise outside the chamber startled her. A shadow moved across the hallway. Ryland stiffened instantly, his hand brushing toward the hilt of a sword at his side. Alara could see the predator beneath the regal mask, the Alpha King ready to strike. But the shadow paused, whispering words she could not hear, and then vanished. Raylan relaxed slightly, though his eyes did not leave the door.
"Alara," he said quietly, "danger is never far from me, and now it may follow you."
She swallowed, fear mixing with excitement.
I want to help," she said.
A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips.
"That courage of yours may save more than you know. Perhaps even me."
For the first time, Alara realized the truth of the world she had stepped into. It was not just the nobility, the politics, or the gilded halls that were dangerous. It was the darkness that lingered in men like Raylan, in the shadows of the kingdom, and in the threads of fate themselves.
Hours passed. Raylan finally stood, moving to a window that overlooked the city.
Moonlight spilled across the streets, painting the world in silver and shadow. Alara followed, curiosity and fear twined together in her chest.
"Do you see it?" he asked, voice low. "The threads of fate shift tonight. Something is coming. Something that could change everything."
Alara felt a shiver crawl along her spine. She wanted to ask what he meant, but the weight of his presence made her silent. She understood without words. The danger she had glimpsed tonight was only the beginning. And then, from somewhere deep in the castle, a whisper echoed, cold and knowing.
"She cannot be allowed to interfere!"
Alara froze. The hair on her arm stood on end. She turned toward Raylan, but his expression was unreadable. His silver eyes gleamed in the moonlight, but they held a warning as well. "Stay close," he said.
"Tonight is not over, and neither is the threat. Trust me, or we may both fall."
Alara's heart pounded, and for the first time she felt the weight of destiny pressing against her small, fragile frame. She had saved the Alpha King with her courage, but now she realized that courage had bound her to him, to the shadows of the court, and to a destiny she could barely comprehend. As she watched him, a thought flickered in her mind. Perhaps the man she had saved was not the only one in need of healing. Perhaps his cursed heart could be touched, if only she dared. And yet, even as she dared to hope, the whisper of danger returned, carrying with it a promise of trials, secrets, and a fate she could not escape. The moonlight shifted across the chamber, and Alara knew one truth with terrifying clarity. Her life had changed forever. And nothing, not glass, not blood, not even fear, could undo the bond that had been forged tonight. Somewhere beyond the walls of the castle, a shadow waited.
It knew of her gift. It knew of her courage, and it would not rest until it had tested both.
Elara swallowed her fear. She had leapt into danger to save a king, and she would leap again if she had to. For the first time she understood the truth of courage, the cost of destiny, and the pull of a heart that would not be denied. And as she gazed at Raylan, kneeling in the moonlight, she felt it, a thread connecting them, fragile yet unbreakable. A thread that would carry them into darkness, into trials, and perhaps
Into light. The shadows beyond the castle walls seemed to whisper her name.
The castle of Eldora was a place of contradictions. Its walls were grand and gleaming in the sunlight, yet its shadows ran deep, curling through hidden corridors and ancient towers.
Elara had never imagined a place so beautiful yet so dangerous.
Even after the gala, after the night she had thrown herself over the Alpha King, the echoes of that moment still throbbed in her chest. Raylan had not forgotten her act of bravery. He had summoned her to remain in the castle, not as a servant, but as someone he wished to watch, to understand. And while part of Elara's mind protested, another part, curious and unafraid, wanted to follow him into the depths of this mysterious world. "Walk with me," Raylan said one morning, his voice soft yet firm. He led her through a narrow corridor lined with faded tapestries depicting battles of centuries past. The threads of those wars shimmered faintly under the light, almost alive. Elara's gaze flickered over the images. She could almost see the stories behind them. The fallen soldiers, the broken oaths, the lives changed forever. It was as if the threads she sometimes glimpsed outside the castle were mirrored here in silk and color.
"Do you see it?"
Raylan asked, stopping in front of a tapestry of a great black dragon defeated by a lone knight.
"Every act leaves a mark. Every choice ripples across time."
I think I can feel it sometimes.
Like the world is alive in ways others can't see.
Raylan's eyes narrowed, the silver light in them gleaming like sharpened steel.
Exactly. That is why I cannot ignore you.
You are different, and yet brave enough to risk yourself for me. Elara's cheeks warmed.
I didn't think of it as bravery.
I just acted. But action can be dangerous, Raylan said. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming and impossible to ignore, especially when it touches someone like me. His gaze was too heavy, too knowing. It felt as if he could see the threads of her heart as clearly as she could see the threads of fate. Raylan led her deeper into the castle, into a chamber few had ever entered. Shelves of ancient books rose like walls, and strange artifacts glimmered in the dim light. A pool of water reflected the moonlight from a high window, casting silver patterns on the floor.
"This is where I study the threads," he said. "Where I try to understand what binds people together."
Some threads are strong, others weak, fragile, easily broken. And some, he paused, eyes fixed on the water.
"Some are cursed." Elara stepped closer to the pool.
"Cursed," she whispered. Raylan's expression darkened. "I am cursed, Elara, and not by any ordinary magic. I have lived longer than most men, and in that time I have learned that connection is dangerous. I cannot touch another human fully, not without risking them or myself." Elara's heart tightened. She had seen the stories of Valdora's Alpha King, how men feared him, how women whispered his name. But to hear it from him, to see the pain in his eyes, she felt a strange kinship. A part of her wanted to reach out, to touch him, to heal what even centuries could not.
"You are not alone in this," she said softly, "even if you think you are."
But the shadow returned. "The world does not forgive weakness," he said.
I have been betrayed too many times. Trust is difficult.
Elara studied him. Then why let me stay here?
Then why let me stay here?
Instead, he walked to a window and gazed at the city beyond. Because fate does not always listen to fear.
"You were brave tonight. You may be the only one who can help me undo what has been done to me and to this kingdom."
Elara's chest tightened. "Undo?
"What happened?"
Raylan's eyes darkened further. Long ago, a sorceress cursed me. She bound my heart so that I could not feel fully. Every bond I form risks corruption, and every emotion comes with pain.
My kingdom suffers because of it. Shadows gather where light should be.
Crops fail, rivers dry, and the people, they whisper about the king who is no longer truly alive.
Elara shivered.
Is there a way to break it? He looked at her, the weight of centuries pressing on him. There is, but it is dangerous. It will require someone to trust me completely, someone willing to risk everything, someone brave enough to step into the darkness with me.
Elara's pulse quickened.
Her hand brushed against the edge of the pool, and she could feel threads moving, shifting, responding to her gift. She saw faintly a silver line stretching from her to Raylan, thin but unbroken. Something inside her whispered that this thread was stronger than anything she had ever encountered. "You mean?"
Me? She asked. Yes, he said simply.
I do not know if the curse can be lifted, but I know that if anyone can help me, it is you. You see the threads, and you are unafraid to touch them.
The words filled her with both fear and determination. She had no illusions about what she was stepping into.
The Alpha King was dangerous, the castle filled with intrigue, and the shadows outside would not rest. Yet a part of her could not turn away.
Over the next days, Raylan began to test her. Not with combat or magic, but with observation and insight. He would present her with riddles of fate, subtle puzzles about the nobles and their hidden alliances, asking her to see what others could not.
Elara's gift allowed her to notice the threads of deceit, loyalty, and hidden ambition.
"You have a rare mind," Raylan said one afternoon, watching her piece together a plot between two rival lords.
You see more than most, and yet you are unafraid of me. That is unusual.
Elara smiled faintly.
I do not see you as a threat.
Raylan's expression softened, but only slightly.
Good, for you will need courage, more than you realize.
One evening, the castle corridors were silent, except for the sound of their footsteps. The moon hung low, casting pale light across the stones. Raylan paused, turning to her.
There is someone here who watches you, he said. Someone who knows your gift.
They wait for the right moment to strike. You must be careful. Elara's stomach tightened.
I do not know yet, he admitted. But shadows always have eyes, even in the brightest light.
As they spoke, a faint chill moved through the hall. Elara felt the threads around her pulse with unease. Something was coming, something deliberate and patient. Suddenly, a window rattled as if struck by an unseen hand. Raylan's eyes narrowed.
Stay close, he commanded.
Do not let them find you alone. Elara followed silently. Her heart beat fast, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She had never felt so alive, so entangled in the life of another person. And yet, she knew the stakes were high. Days passed and the bond between them grew. Raylan taught her not only to see the threads, but to sense the currents of power, the ebb and flow of influence among the nobles. He showed her the map of the kingdom, its cities and villages, and how shadows of his curse had spread through the land. You will help me heal this kingdom, he said, tracing the fading lines on the map.
But first, we must heal what is broken within us.
Elara understood, though the weight of his words made her chest ache. There was something in him, hidden behind the armor of a king, a man who longed to feel and to connect. And she wanted to help him, though she did not yet know how. The first true test came unexpectedly. A noble from a neighboring province arrived, seeking alliance but hiding dark intentions. In the council chamber, he whispered threats, manipulating threads of fate to ensnare Raylan. Elara sensed the danger before it became visible. She spoke quietly to the king, pointing out the hidden connections, the unseen motivations. He listened, his eyes sharp and intense, and together they turned the meeting in their favor.
That was impressive,
Ryland said later, walking beside her in the moonlit courtyard.
You can see the truth that others cannot, and you act on it without hesitation.
She wanted to reach for him, to touch the hand that had healed her, but the caution in his eyes held her back. I only do what I can, she whispered.
Do not underestimate yourself, he said softly.
Courage is rare, and yours may save not just me, but this kingdom.
As they paused at the edge of the courtyard, a gust of wind swept through, carrying a whisper that chilled her. Somewhere in the castle, a shadow had moved again, watching, waiting.
Elara,
Raylan said, sensing her tension. We are not alone. Before she could respond, a figure slipped from the darkness. A messenger cloaked in black, bearing a sealed letter with the mark of the ancient sorceress. The seal glowed faintly, ominously. Raylan's hand brushed hers, a small protective gesture that made her pulse quicken.
Open it,
he commanded quietly. Elara broke the seal with trembling fingers.
The letter was short, written in a flowing dark script. The girl who sees must choose. The threads of fate bind more than hearts.
One false step, and the darkness consumes all.
She looked at Raylan. His expression was unreadable, a mask of power and fear.
We are in this together, he said quietly, brushing a strand of hair from her face.
But the trials are only beginning.
Elara swallowed hard, understanding that nothing in this castle, no power, no courage, and no bond, would be simple again. The threads of fate had pulled her close to the Alpha King, but danger followed, patient and unyielding. And somewhere, beyond the stone walls and flickering torches, the shadows waited. They had noticed the connection between Elara and Raylan.
They would not rest until it was tested, and perhaps broken. The moon rose high above Valdora, casting silver light across the castle.
Elara and Raylan stood together, bound by courage, curiosity, and a fragile thread of trust. And in that silver light, the first true test of their bond was about to begin. The forest beyond the walls of Valdora stretched like a living shadow, thick with twisted trees, their branches reaching like blackened arms. The wind whispered through the leaves in strange, haunting tones, carrying the weight of unseen eyes. Elara had never ventured so far from the safety of the city. Her heart pounded with fear, but also with determination. She had chosen to follow Raylan into this perilous world, and there was no turning back.
Raylan rode ahead, his black cloak billowing behind him like smoke. Even in the dim light, he looked commanding, every movement controlled and deliberate. The Alpha King, feared by all, moved with a grace that suggested both predator and protector. Elara, on foot, kept close behind, every sense alert to the dangers around them. You must be careful, Raylan said without looking back. The forest is alive in ways you cannot yet understand. Shadows twist here, feeding on fear and doubt. Do not let them see it.
Elara nodded, gripping the strap of her satchel. Her mind raced with questions. Why are we here? She asked.
Why not face the sorceress in the castle? Raylan's expression darkened. The curse cannot be broken in comfort. It thrives in shadow and fear. To face it, we must confront the darkness in the world, and in ourselves. Only then can trust be proven. They moved deeper into the forest, the sunlight fading to a dull gray as the canopy thickened.
Strange symbols etched into stones and trees glimmered faintly, pulsing with energy. Elara felt the threads around her tremble, some vibrating with alarm, others with a strange promise. She realized that the forest itself was alive, aware of them, and judging them. Suddenly, the path ahead vanished. A thick fog rolled in, white and cold, wrapping around them. Raylan slowed, eyes narrowing.
Stay close, he warned. The mist will reveal your fears. It will test your heart. Elara swallowed. She had heard tales of enchanted forests, of travelers lost forever in illusions that preyed on the mind, but she had never imagined how real it could feel.
Shapes moved in the fog, whispering her name, showing fleeting images of danger and loss. Elara, alone, lost. Her breath quickened. She focused on the threads, trying to discern the real from the false. She saw a silver line stretching to Raylan, steady and unbroken, and it gave her courage. She reached for it, letting it anchor her.
"You are stronger than you think," Raylan's voice said from beside her. He had stepped into the mist, his presence solid and protective.
Do not doubt yourself. Do not doubt us.
A figure emerged from the fog, cloaked in black, eyes glowing faintly red. Elara instinctively reached for the threads, but the figure moved with unnatural speed, its shadow stretching toward her.
"Do not fear it," Raylan commanded. With a wave of his hand, a barrier of shimmering light erupted around them. The shadow hissed, retreating, but did not vanish. It waited, patient and deliberate. Elara's heart raced. She realized this was more than a test. It was a warning.
The darkness would follow them, always probing, always patient, until they made a mistake. As they continued, Raylan spoke of the curse in more detail. "Long ago, a sorceress sought to control me. She bound my heart with a spell of isolation, so that every bond would bring suffering. I have walked through centuries without feeling fully alive. The land suffers because I suffer. Shadows gather where my heart cannot shine."
Elara listened. Elara listened. Feeling the weight of his words press against her own heart. Then,
"If the curse is broken, will the kingdom heal?"
He looked at her with a mixture of hope and doubt. Perhaps.
But it will require more than courage. It will require trust.
And it will require sacrifice. The forest opened onto a clearing, a lake black as obsidian reflecting the silver moon. The water shimmered with an unnatural light, and the threads around them quivered. Raylan stopped at the edge, his eyes fixed on the reflection.
"This lake," he said, "marks the boundary of the trials. Entering it is not easy.
You will face visions of your deepest fears, your greatest regrets. Many have tried and fled, lost to the shadows forever." Elara's chest tightened, but she stepped forward. She had come too far to turn back now.
The threads pulsed around her, some dark, some silver, guiding her. She felt Raylan's presence beside her, steady, grounding her.
The moment she stepped into the lake, the surface rippled and shimmered. She saw herself, not as she was, but as she feared she might be. Small, powerless, abandoned. She saw visions of those she loved, twisted and harmed by forces beyond her control. She wanted to flee, but Raylan's hand touched hers, firm and reassuring.
"Do not let the visions control you," he said. "You are stronger than your fears." Elara focused on the threads, letting them guide her through the illusions.
Each step forward was a battle, each heartbeat a victory. Slowly the visions began to fade, replaced by a silver light emanating from the lake itself. She felt herself grow stronger, not in body but in spirit. When she emerged, the forest around them seemed to breathe, the shadows retreating slightly.
Raylan nodded. "You have passed the first trial," he said.
Few have such courage. Few can face their fears without faltering.
Elara smiled faintly, though exhaustion weighed on her.
What comes next? She asked.
Raylan's expression darkened.
The sorceress has bound more than my heart. She has placed traps throughout the kingdom, waiting for those who dare to challenge her.
We must find the source of the curse, confront her, and break it before it consumes everything. Elara's heart beat faster.
The task seemed impossible, but with Raylan by her side, she felt a strange certainty. The threads of fate connected them now, stronger than ever.
Their journey continued for days. They faced creatures born of shadow, illusions that preyed on their doubts, and treacherous paths that tested their endurance.
Each trial drew them closer together, not just as allies but as two hearts bound by trust and shared danger. One evening, they camped on a hill overlooking the forest. The moon was full, casting silver light over the land. Raylan sat beside Alara, watching the threads shimmer in the darkness.
You are changing me, he said quietly. Not through magic, not through power, but through courage, through hope. You make me feel something I have not felt in centuries.
Alara turned to him, surprised.
I do not understand. How can I change someone like you?
He looked at her, his eyes soft yet intense. You see the threads. Wait.
You see the truth, and you are unafraid. That is rare and precious, perhaps even more valuable than any sword or spell.
Her heart raced. She wanted to reach out to touch the hand that had healed her, but a shadow of caution lingered.
I only do what I can, she whispered. You do more than you know, he said. And soon you will need to do even more. The sorceress will not wait. She will strike when we least expect it.
As they spoke, the wind shifted, carrying a cold whisper. Alara felt the threads pulse with unease. Somewhere in the darkness, the sorceress watched, waiting. The next trial came suddenly. From the trees emerged a creature of shadow, its eyes glowing red, wings stretching wide. It circled them, hissing, testing their courage. Alara felt the threads tighten around her, the silver line to Rylan vibrating with urgency. "Stay close!" Rylan commanded.
Do not falter. Together they faced the creature, using courage, wit, and trust to drive it back. Alara focused on the threads, sensing the weaknesses in the shadow.
Raylan moved with precision, striking at the right moment to push the creature into retreat. When it vanished into the darkness, Alara sank to her knees, exhausted but alive. Raylan knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You were magnificent," he said.
Do not forget this feeling. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to move forward despite it.
She realized that the bond between them had grown stronger than she could have imagined. The threads were no longer just silver, they were a connection of trust, of hope, of shared purpose. And yet the shadows were not done. As they prepared to continue their journey, a cold wind swept through the trees, carrying a voice that chilled Alara to her core. "One step closer, and the light you cherish will burn."
One step closer, and the curse will consume all.
Alara shivered, glancing at Raylan. His expression was grim, but his hand found hers steady and warm. "We face it together," he said, his voice low and resolute. Alara nodded, gripping his hand tightly. She understood now that the trials were only beginning. The threads of fate had pulled her into darkness, but also into a bond she could not deny. A bond that might save Raylan, the kingdom, and perhaps herself.
The forest stretched before them, dark and alive, whispering secrets and threats.
But with the Alpha King by her side, Alara felt ready to face whatever came next. And somewhere, in the shadows beyond, the sorceress watched, patient and deliberate, knowing the time for the next trial was near. The threads had been tested, and the next challenge would push them to the very edge of courage, trust, and heart. The ruins of the ancient temple rose like jagged teeth from the misty valley below.
Its walls were carved from black stone streaked with gold, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Alara felt the threads of fate thrumming around her, tighter and more urgent than ever. Every step toward the temple brought a mixture of fear, anticipation, and determination. Raylan walked beside her, silent, his presence both comforting and commanding.
He had been quiet since they entered the valley, his silver eyes scanning the horizon, alert for danger. Alara sensed the weight of centuries pressing down on him, the burden of a curse that had shaped kingdoms and men alike. And now, the end of that curse lay just ahead. "The sorceress waits," he said finally, his voice low, almost a whisper carried by the wind.
She has woven every shadow to test us. Every fear you faced in the forest, every doubt you felt, it all leads here.
Alara nodded, gripping the small satchel at her side. Her mind raced with memories of the trials, the illusions in the lake, the creature in the forest, the whispered warnings from shadows. Each step had been a challenge, but each had drawn her closer to Raylan and to the threads that bound them.
I am ready, she said, though her voice trembled slightly. Whatever comes, I will not turn back.
Raylan glanced at her, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. Pride, relief, and perhaps a trace of hope.
Good, he said, because to undo a curse you must step fully into the darkness. Only then can light return.
The temple doors loomed ahead, carved with ancient runes that pulsed with magic. Elara felt the threads stretch toward the entrance, vibrating with warning. She could almost hear them whisper, "One false move, and all is lost." Raylan reached for the doors, placing a hand on the cool stone. The runes glowed brighter, reacting to his touch.
The sorceress will appear when we enter. Do not let fear rule your heart. Elara nodded, drawing in a deep breath. Together they stepped through the threshold. Inside, the temple was vast and silent, lit by a pale golden light that seemed to come from nowhere. Shadows clung to the corners, writhing like living things. At the center, standing on a dais, was the sorceress.
She was tall, cloaked in black silk that shimmered like water, her eyes glowing faintly red. The air around her seemed to hum with power.
You have come, she said, her voice melodic but sharp as a blade. The girl who sees, the cursed king. You think you can undo what I have woven? Fools. Raylan stepped forward, his silver eyes fixed on her. Your curse ends today, he said, voice steady and commanding. No shadow, no magic, and no fear can hold me any longer. The sorceress smiled, but it was cruel without warmth. She raised a hand, and the shadows in the temple began to twist and move, forming into grotesque shapes that lunged toward them. Elara felt the threads tighten, warning her of danger. She reached for the silver line that connected her to Raylan, drawing strength from it. We face it together, she whispered.
Raylan's hand brushed hers, a grounding touch that reminded her of the courage she had already shown.
Together,
he agreed.
The shadows attacked, but Elara and Raylan moved as one. She used her gift to sense the weak points in the dark forms, directing Raylan where to strike.
His movements were precise and powerful, each swing of his hand or weapon dispersing the shadows. Yet for every shadow defeated, another emerged, more twisted and cunning than before. The sorceress watched, eyes gleaming with amusement. You are strong, she said, but strength alone cannot undo what has been done. Strength alone would not break the curse. It required trust, courage, and sacrifice. She took a step forward, letting the threads guide her to the center of the temple, toward the dais. Raylan followed, placing his hand lightly on her shoulder. You are not afraid? He asked softly. I am afraid, she admitted, but I will not let fear control me. The sorceress's laughter echoed through the temple, chilling and beautiful all at once. Very well, then show me the power of courage. Elara closed her eyes and let the threads flow through her, feeling every connection she had sensed over the past weeks. She felt the pulse of the forest, the lake, the castle, and the city beyond. She felt the people of Valdora, their hopes, fears, and lives woven into a tapestry of destiny. And she saw Raylan, bound by shadows and pain, yet reaching toward her. She took a deep breath and stepped closer, letting her hand brush his. Raylan, I trust you. I trust us. Let us end this together. For the first time in centuries, Raylan allowed himself to fully open his heart. The curse that had held him for so long began to unravel. Light poured from him, silver and pure, cutting through the shadows that filled the temple. The sorceress shrieked, raising her arms to defend herself, but the force of their combined courage was unstoppable. Elara felt the threads pulse violently, then settle, binding her to Raylan in a connection that was stronger than fear, stronger than darkness. The shadows dissipated, dissolving into mist, leaving the temple bathed in golden light. The sorceress fell to her knees, her power broken. Impossible, she whispered. How? Raylan's gaze met hers. calm and resolute.
Because hope and courage are stronger than any curse.
Alara felt tears prick her eyes. The journey had been long, terrifying, and uncertain, but they had done it. The curse was broken. The shadows that had haunted Valdora were gone, replaced by light that shimmered like gold across the temple walls. Ryland turned to her, kneeling on one knee.
Elara,
he said softly, you saved me.
not just from the curse, but from centuries of isolation. You healed what no magic could touch.
Elara's chest tightened.
I only did what I had to, she whispered. No, he said firmly. You did more than that. You showed me trust, courage, and the strength of the human heart. You have changed everything.
And then, in the soft golden light of the temple, Raylan leaned forward and placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. A kiss of gratitude, of trust, of redemption. Elara felt a warmth spread through her, healing not just her body but her spirit. The threads that connected them shimmered, silver and unbreakable. The temple seemed to sigh, the light settling around them.
Outside, the first dawn in centuries rose over the valley, painting the ruins and forest in pale gold. The kingdom of Valdora stirred, the shadows retreating, and life beginning anew. Elara and Raylan stepped outside together, hand in hand. The world felt different, lighter, and full of possibility.
They did not speak, for words were unnecessary. The bond between them said everything: trust, courage, hope, and the promise of the future. But even as the sun rose, a whisper of caution lingered in the wind. The shadows of the past had not vanished completely, only retreated. Somewhere beyond the horizon, threats still waited, patient and watchful. Raylan squeezed Elara's hand, sensing her thoughts.
Whatever comes, he said, we face it together. The threads have bound us, and we will not break.
Elara nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate in her very soul. The kingdom was safe for now. The curse was broken. And yet the journey they had taken, the trials, the fears, the trust they had built, had changed them forever. They walked down the hill toward the valley below, where life was stirring again. Children laughed as farmers tended the fields. The river sparkled, and the forest beyond seemed alive with new energy. Valdora was waking from a long shadow, and in the heart of it, two souls stood stronger than ever, bound by courage, trust, and a bond that could not be broken. Elara looked up at Raylan, the Alpha King who had once been a figure of fear and shadow, and saw a man reborn. He looked back at her with silver eyes full of warmth, hope, and something she had never expected: love, quiet, and steadfast. And in that moment she realized that destiny was not just a thread to follow. It was something to create. Together. The first dawn had come. The curse was gone. And the bond between them promised a future full of challenges, yes, but also of courage, trust, and light.
The shadows of the past may linger, but they would face them, side by side.
And so, with the golden light of morning spilling over Valdora, the Alpha King and the brave girl who had leapt into his path began a new chapter, not just for themselves, but for the kingdom they had saved, and for the fate they would now shape together.